Hi everyone, welcome to the Pet Travel Guy podcast. I'm Nick from Sky Kennels in the UK. People have been asking me to do a podcast for a while, and despite having a face for radio, here we are. I've been in the industry for quite a while. I spent 7 years on the board of directors of IPATA, the International Pet and Animal Transport Association, which is effectively our industry body worldwide. Initially, I was the regional director for the European region, did that for 4 years, and then spent 3 years as the chair of the education committee on the IPATA board, effectively responsible for education and standards across the industry globally. So I've got a little bit of knowledge. Hopefully a little bit of knowledge is not too dangerous a thing. But we thought we'd start the podcast to help people relocate internationally with their pets. We're going to try and dispel some of the myths. And generally we're just here to advise on any pet travel issues. Very much your podcast. We really would appreciate your input, and the more input we get, the more of these podcasts that we will put out. You can contact us via our social media platforms at Sky Kennels, or please email us at info@skykennels.com, tag it for the Pet Travel Guy, and we'll respond. If it's a very specific question for your particular pet and your circumstance, then more than happy to respond by direct message, email. If it's a general question that you'd like answered, then we'll try and address it in a podcast. So please get in touch. Let us know what you would like to hear. We're going to cover some of the standard questions that we get asked week in, week out, and have done for years. And that's all about the actual Sky Kennels themselves. How do we size them? How do we build them? What do they need in them? How do we get our pet used to being in one? We'll talk a little bit later on this podcast. We'll talk about the basic veterinary requirements and a good starting point for any move internationally. And I'll talk a little bit about the pet passport, the EU pet passport. We'll talk a little bit about breed restrictions on a subsequent podcast, whether that's the snub-nosed breeds, the brachycephalic short-skulled breeds, both dogs and cats. We'll touch a little bit on certain dog breeds that perhaps have a less than favourable reputation, some of the stronger breeds. We'll look at what the restrictions are in terms of travelling by route. Certain airlines won't carry heat embargoes, cold embargoes, that kind of thing. We will touch on specific country requirements. We've got a survey on our social media at the moment asking for your opinions on what the most popular countries that you'd like to travel to are, and we'll try and address those. And by all means, if your country that you're interested in isn't listed on the survey, send us a message and we'll try and address it as well. We'll address the most popular ones first, and obviously these podcasts will be there to review at a later stage. Now, we can talk generally about the requirements because obviously we're moving pets around the world all the time. But what we'll also try and do is get guest speakers involved from those countries who can give you chapter and verse local expertise. And they're our partners that we work with day in, day out. If there's a demand, we will do a live Q&A. But I suspect that you'll probably grow tired of me very quickly. So please send the questions or any requests via the social media or info@skykennels.com, tagged as the Pet Travel Guy. So in this first episode of the Pet Travel Guy podcast, we're just going to talk very briefly about basic veterinary requirements and what we should all do, or what we recommend that we all do. The first step is obviously the microchip. Now, many countries around the world mandate that pets are microchipped now, but interestingly, very few countries around the world actually maintain microchip databases, but we'll touch on that again in a moment. Now, just to dispel a myth about microchips, when you scan a microchip, all you see is the number. Most countries have adopted the ISO standard, which is a 15-digit microchip number, but certain countries have local ones as well. And indeed, some of those countries, even if your pet has an ISO standard and you arrive in that country, they may insist that you have a local chip inserted as well. But that's fine. Most international airports have a sort of multitude of scanners that can read any chip. But the chip only gives whoever reads it that number. It doesn't tell them your pet's name, breed, any clinical history. It doesn't give them any details about you, your telephone number, etc. To get that kind of information, they'd have to go to the microchip database. And as I said earlier, most countries or many countries don't actually maintain microchip databases. I would also encourage you that whenever you move, and I'm guilty of this myself, forgetting to update my microchip provider with my new details and my address, my contact details, my email addresses, that kind of thing. So please try and do that whenever anything changes. But of course, if you're traveling internationally, the country you're going to may not have a database anyway. Now, there are certain things that you can do to try and ensure your pet can be sort of identified globally. Global Pet Register is a system that we use, and I can do a podcast on that and get the founder of that on to talk about that, which we'll do at a later date. But there are things that you can do. Anyway, so first step, make sure that your pet is microchipped. And then whenever you go to the vets, always ask that the vet scans the microchip. Excuse me. And the reason we're doing that is not only does it confirm that it's your pet, but it also allows the vet to ensure that the vaccination card, pet passport, whatever it is up to date against that microchip number. And it's purely a way of identifying that specific pet has had that specific treatment, test, vaccination, whatever it is, on that date. And that becomes very important for pet travel. So please ensure that your pet's are microchipped and that the vet scans it every time you go. In terms of your annual boosters, talking specifically about the UK, we would certainly recommend that you have them and you keep them up to date. Some countries do require them, but not all. But it's just something that we'd recommend. It's a preventative thing and helps your pet generally. If you are relocating internationally, there is a very good chance that your pet will go into boarding for at least one night before you travel and potentially have quarantine at the far end, depending where you're going. If your pet is going into a boarding facility, cattery or kennel, then please ensure that they've been treated for kennel cough, parainfluenza, Bordetella for cats, at least 14 days before they enter that boarding facility. Just again, gives them a level of protection when they go in and helps protect all the other pets in there as well. So that's the sort of basic. That's what we do every day anyway, whether we're traveling or not. The first real step for traveling is a rabies vaccine. Most countries around the world now require a rabies vaccine. And post-Brexit, if you're leaving the UK going into Europe on a summer holiday, you will require a rabies vaccine before you go. So generally, it's rabies vaccine, wait for 21 days, and then you're fine. Other places, it may be wait for at least 30 days, but less than 12 months before you travel. So again, please ask, and we're happy to advise on those things. I mentioned the EU pet passport. Obviously, with Brexit, the UK came out of the EU pet passport scheme, and excuse me, we've gone down a different route, leaving the UK for Europe. EU pet passport was very much a European thing. USA did allow a little bit of travel with the pet passport, but it's very much a European thing. So for pets leaving the UK going into Europe now, we have an animal health certificate, which pretty much any vet can download and do for you at whatever the rates they determine. It was announced last week, so we're in May 2025 at the moment. It was announced last week that in discussions with the EU, the British government has proposed a return to the EU pet passport scheme. We have no details on it at the moment. Personally, I think that'd be a great thing. It simplifies keeping everything in one booklet. But right now, the UK is not in the EU pet passport scheme. And in fact, whilst you can still come into the UK on a pet passport from the EU, please note that if any UK vet currently makes an entry into that EU pet passport, he or she will void that document because we're not in that scheme right now. It may change, and if it does, we'll do another podcast to update you on the details. But yeah, that's effectively it. They're the basic veterinary requirements. So microchip, We recommend the annual boosters are kept up to date, and a rabies vaccine if you are thinking about travelling internationally. As I said earlier, specific countries will have more in-depth veterinary requirements. We can address those generally, but for the most popular countries, then what we'll try and do is get a guest speaker from that country to come onto the podcast, dial in, and we'll do a video podcast and get them to answer any questions and give us general sort of updates on their specific requirements. Hopefully that's been of some use. This is very much the format. It'll be me answering your questions, dealing with general inquiries that I've mentioned. We'll try and keep them to 5 to 10 minutes. I think any longer than that and you'll become bored. So please get in touch. The Pet Travel Guy on our social media at Sky Kennels or via info@skykennels.com, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.